Welcome to Cincinnati Soccer Talk, the podcast covering all things soccer in the Queen City. So get in touch, soccer fans. Email us at feedback@cincinnati-soccertalk.com. Now, here's your host, Nick Suberly.
Hey, what's happening, CSTers? Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Welcome to Cincinnati Soccer Talk, the first FC Cincinnati podcast by fans for fans. It's Christmas time. It's the final show, the final live show, I should say, of Cincinnati Soccer Talk for the 2018 season. We've got a big one in store for you this week. Coming up here in just a few moments, we're going to visit with Bobby Warshaw from MLSsoccer.com and the Extra Time Radio podcast. For those of you who don't know, Brad is absolutely fanboying out right now because he is a huge fan of Bobby, and we all are, to be fair. He's really good at what he does there at MLSsoccer.com and a great co-host there of the Extra Time Radio podcast. So we'll be joined by him here in just a few moments. Of course, we're following along on all the chats, whether it's Facebook or YouTube tonight. Make sure you get in touch with us on Twitter at Cincy Soccer Talk. And with that, I welcome in my tag team partners for this week. I'll throw it over, as I mentioned, to the one and only Brad Weigel, who is a big fan of Bobby Warshaw. Brad, how are you?
Dude, huge fan. I'm excited to talk to Bobby, excited to get his takes. I think there's been a lot of hot takes out there about FC Cincinnati and their squad building, and some people aren't very big fans of it, but I think Bobby has some couple interesting takes. But before you move on to Rob, I want to give a shout out and congratulations to Coach Austin Berry. Guy got married this weekend, so congrats to him and his lovely wife, and big things moving ahead for Coach Berry and the team in 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. Congrats, Austin. And that is exciting news for him this offseason. He was obviously very busy this past season coaching the team and doing really well there. So, again, that's a good way to start off the show. As Brad mentioned, we are welcomed this week by Rob Pierce, who returns back to the podcast. It's been a few weeks. Rob, how are you?
I am doing excellent. I have that top of the Premier League table feeling going on right now.
And we quickly move on. No, I'm kidding, Rob. No, Liverpool had a very good weekend, and I will just leave it at that.
Now, I am also excited to talk to Bobby Warshaw. Read his book, listened to him and the rest of the Extra Time Radio crew as much as I can, so definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, as am I. Here he will be joining us in just a few moments. But before we can get into all that, there is some news we should get to regarding FC Cincinnati. It was announced this week that this past week. It was the Thursday and Friday of last week, I believe. We have some new players for FC Cincinnati. Let's start first with the goalkeeper, shall we? We have a new goalkeeper. His name is Przemysław Teton. I hope I said that name right. I think Jack Stern said it best. We're just going to call him TT. So TT, a Polish goalkeeper who will fill an international spot for FC Cincinnati. 13 professional seasons in Poland, in the Netherlands, Germany, and Spain in their top flights. He's also got 14 caps for Poland, so he's got some international soccer playing experience as well, or as they say over there, football experience, guys. So let's start with TT. How excited are you about this signing? And, what does that do for FC Cincinnati, boys?
Go ahead, Rob.
I'll tell you, first of all, that's a tifo in the making right there with the name and everything else. I like it. He's without a team since August, so there might be a little rust to knock off, but that's what the preseason is for, right? Reading his background, he got called up for Poland in the 2012 UEFA European Championship tournament, and he was a sub. Came on after the starter, got a red card, and the first thing he does is save a penalty kick. That was some time ago, but it just shows that he's ready to answer the call.
Yeah, it's an interesting selection to me, just because I think it was off everybody's radar, and I think a lot of teams in the past, especially new expansion franchises, have gone the domestic route with the keeper. We do have Spencer Ritchie, but I think a lot of people are thinking we might get a Matt Lamson or a Joe Bendick, maybe somewhere reliable. And, we might still get that because later this week we have the second round of the reentry draft. And then, some of those players don't get signed. They might get released back out. And, maybe that's where we get a third goalkeeper. But he definitely has a pedigree. And I like that it was a free transfer. Like Rob said, he's been without contract since the end of this past season, but I know a lot of people out there or it's been reported that he's been training with his old Polish club. They offered him a contract, but he wanted to play at a higher level, and I think this is a good opportunity for him. And look, there's not many keepers in Major League Soccer that have played at Bayern Munich, at Barcelona, at Real Madrid. So you got to be good just to be on the field there. So hopefully, if he can rekindle some of that magic from a couple of years ago, where he was stellar and was getting the international caps, it's a positive. So I'm interested to see what he does. But I would also, I think, expect FC Cincinnati to bring in a backup goalkeeper like a Lamson or Bendick, just to have that insurance policy, just to be safe, because he did speak English, in his interview. But it's really key to communicate with your back line in this league and in every league. And I'm really interested to see how that chemistry is going to be built, especially in a first year club where that's extremely important.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the experience part of it, Brad, because I didn't think about that side as far as current MLS goalkeepers go, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't even know if you could say Tim Howard has that experience, and he's obviously been playing in Europe, played over in England, played in pretty much every English stadium you possibly could have. But it's not like Everton had a whole lot of European experience, so it wasn't like they were, traveling outside of England all too often. But I mean, off the top of my head, I cannot really think of another goalkeeper in this league that has that experience. That's an excellent point. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means he's seen a lot of things, right? I mean, he's seen a lot of a lot of shots. The highlight reel we saw that FC Cincinnati put out showed that he's definitely got the ability. He's got quick reflexes, Rob. And, again, we're not sure what's going to happen here, but clearly he's going to be the number one keeper for FC Cincinnati, considering they used an international spot for him.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about Spencer Ritchie as a potential backup. But I would like to see a third keeper, as Brad mentioned, come in and kind of push Spencer to see, who would get that backup.
And as we mentioned, he was not the only signing for FC Cincinnati last week. Victor Ulloa, I think I said it correctly.
Ulloa.
Yeah. We're going to have a hard time with these names going forward for FC Cincinnati. He's a defensive midfielder who arrived from FC Dallas. He is an FC Dallas homegrown player. He had 27 appearances last year with 25 starts. He became the first ever FC Dallas homegrown player to play in over 2,000 minutes in a season. He also welcomed a new baby boy last week, Luca, to the world on December 13th. So a very busy week for Victor Ulloa for FC Cincinnati, new midfielder. But again, FC Cincinnati making some moves to improve their squad, Brad. I mean, this is a really good signing. You were really speaking highly of him last week on our show, even though it hadn't been confirmed. But you were pretty excited about this one.
Yeah, he gives you a lot of flexibility in that midfield and some experience. He spent a lot of time the last 4 seasons on the field in Dallas. Last year he kind of started off a little bit slow. He was a little bit buried in the pecking order, but he dug down deep, and he was the starter, I think, the last 20-something games of the season. And it's kind of an interesting move for FC Cincinnati because, in his first several years in the league, he was more that deep-lying midfielder. And then, this past season, he's more moved into that box-to-box role, and you've seen his growth explode. And so I think it was a shrewd piece of business for FC Cincinnati because, Dallas is all on this youth bandwagon movement. So they were looking to move some other pieces. And, he's still young at 26. He has a lot of time left. So it was a good piece of business. FC Cincinnati was be able to send a little bit of, GAM his way. And I think they'd get a contributor in either the 6 or 8 role in that midfielder day one. I think more of the 8, but we'll see. But I'm high on the move.
This is a good signing in a sense that, he's somebody that came through FC Dallas's academy. And this is somebody who a homegrown player. You don't see this a whole lot in Major League Soccer because the system is still relatively young in Major League Soccer. So the fact that you've got homegrown players playing the amount of minutes that he did there for Dallas and that he's still young, that tells you he's already got great MLS experience, Rob. And, he's going to be one of those guys in the midfield that we're really counting on.
Yeah, it seems like he would be a box-to-box type midfielder who can work it on both ends. And like Brad said, he has played that defensive mid before, so that's a bonus. A lot of people weren't very excited after all the USL call-ups and the expansion draft picks, and I get that. But since then, the club has been making some pretty solid additions. It's like our guest Bobby Warshaw was saying last week. They're building from the back, and that's a good strategy to take. Bobby mentioned that they're missing another attacking piece, and I think that's right. But this defense has some potential, and I think Victor can play a big role in that.
It's all about the spine, right? We always hear about the spine of the team. So they go out and they get the goalkeeper, right? And we think he's going to be a pretty solid starter in Major League Soccer. They go and trade for Kendall Waston, who was a captain for the Vancouver Whitecaps, has some international experience as well. So you have a solid center back there. We know what you get in Forrest Lasso. Could they potentially go out and get another center back? I'd like to think that they will. Now you get Victor Ulloa. I think I got it right.
There you go.
Finally, Ulloa, who is going to play some significant minutes there at the 6, potentially the 8. And you know what you have in Fernando Adi. So the spine of the team has some potential. Now, the one thing they're missing is that 10, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. But so far, these signings appear to be, you want to build a great spine. And so far, that's a good start for FC Cincinnati. Another rumored potential player that we've been hearing about, Alvis Powell from Portland Timbers, a right back for the Timbers. Didn't see a whole lot of minutes down the stretch for the Timbers, but when he did come on as a sub, brought an energy and brought some pace that was lacking in that unit. And it's somebody that you could throw on late in the game and give you some width and whip balls into the box and, get by defenders. Alvis Powell, Brad, your thoughts on him potentially joining FC Cincinnati?
Yeah, kind of an interesting one, kind of like the Darren Maddox signing. I'm not so sure about it. And the only reason we've seen what Alvis Powell could do going forward. He's got the wheels. He can get balls into the box. He can be a very great attacking threat. But he's been suspect on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm really interested to see, how we're going to utilize him. Is he going to be the right back off the bench? Is he going to be a starting right back? I have a feeling, at 24, he still has a lot of time to improve, and I think he's going to get a lot of minutes with this club. I'm just kind of trying to see the picture and how it kind of plays out, because we definitely have an attacking left back.
Yeah.
And we've seen Garza's quality, and even though Alvis Powell, he's great, he's got the wheels. Do we want to send both bombers up and then have two center backs, especially maybe if we're forced to be with Nadam or Lasso? Do we really want to expose that? So it's an interesting move. I'm not crazy high on it. I'm not criticizing it. I think this is more just like, it's a good piece. Let's wait and see how it goes.
So Alvis Powell, another one of those rumored players. Another rumor that we've been seeing a lot lately is this is a center attacking mid, 10, something we were talking about a minute ago. Matias Fernandez, and I'm going to do my best to say this team name down in Liga MX. I think it's Necaxa. Yikes. Family friendly. So anyway, he joins or potentially joins. It's a rumor. He's a 32-year-old Chilean. He's won Copa MX. I don't know, Rob, you heard this news. Obviously, this is a position of need, the 10 spot for FC Cincinnati. But I know it is just a rumor. But when you hear that they're going after somebody who has a pedigree like this, what do you say?
I don't know a whole lot about Matthias, but I do know that FC Cincinnati needs a central attacking midfielder. His age makes me a little nervous, but he's probably not going to be a guy that's going to be here for years upon years.
Yeah.
I would think that it would just be 2 or so until you get to the new stadium and really start to build from there. But this is definitely one of their needs.
And speaking of more, go ahead, Brad.
No, I was going to say, about Matty, if we can stay on him for just 1 second. With Matty Fernandez, interesting signing, because we're looking for that attacking midfielder. As you said, he can play the 10 role. We've seen him with Necaxa, kind of, especially the second half of the year, kind of come a little bit deeper into that 8 role. So I'm really interested in this one to see what we would have to pay for him, where he would come in on the depth chart. If we can get him, because I know he has 6 months left on his deal with Necaxa. I would wonder if we would get him in the summer. I wonder if we would get him now. Will Necaxa, with almost 3 weeks till their season starts, will they let him go to FC Cincinnati? What would we pay? And is he our long-term 10? I actually think he could be a nice little stopgap where the first half of the year, if we can get him in, he can play that 10 role. He can set up some play. I would have a lot of confidence there. And then maybe we can go out in the summer window and actually get a true young, fast number 10, maybe drop Maddie a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And I think that just opens up a whole lot of options with the club. So I'm interested to see what kind of piece of business the club can do here. See if they, my train of thought aligns up with Koch, but he's a winner. He won Copa MX this year. He's played in the World Cup. He won Copa America with Chile in 2015. So great pedigree.
Yeah. Again, still just a rumor though, hasn't been confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wait and see what happens with that potential signing. And last but not least, Matthew Deplagne. This was a rumor that kind of came about. I feel like almost 4 or 5 weeks ago, but kind of resurfaced this week through French news outlets. But he's another right back. So you've got Justin Hoyt at right back. You've got potentially Alvis Powell, and now potentially Matthew Deplagne. He's a French footballer, 27 years old, played in League 2, or 2, I guess that's what they say over there in France. But again, another one of these rumors. We're not sure what's going to happen. We know that KLR, Knifey Line Radio, they're huge on Matthew Deplagne. So we'll see what happens with that. So on that is kind of the latest roster news for FC Cincinnati as we wait. And we're hopefully going to be joined by Bobby Warshaw here in just a few moments. Gentlemen, we had to also say some goodbyes this week to a couple of FC Cincinnati players. Brad, why don't you fill everybody in?
Yeah, looks like Russell Cicerone was signed by St. Louis yesterday. So it's or maybe yesterday or today, but that's great news for him. I think a lot of us see the promise in his speed and his willingness to take on players, and he just didn't get enough minutes here to make that jump to Major League Soccer. And I don't blame the staff for not taking him. There's only so many spots, and I think Jimmy's more proven at this point in time. So, best of luck to Russell, and I think a bright future ahead with him. And then I know Evan Newton's been putting some stuff out there that he's getting rid of his condo, so it looks like he's moving on as well. I kind of thought that we might be seeing the Gold Glove winner stick around, but looks like he might have gotten an opportunity somewhere else. So really excited for him and wish him the best of luck with him and his family. We had an interesting start with Evan on the show, but he's been a great guy and a huge asset to Cincinnati the last couple of years.
Yeah. So Evan Newton and Russell Cicerone both saying goodbye to the club and going on and moving on to more opportunities for them in their soccer playing career. Well, we are really excited to have what we think is one of the best we'll say pundits here in the United States as far as soccer goes. Does a great job covering the game there at MLSsoccer.com. And of course, you can always hear him over on the Extra Time Radio podcast as well. He is Bobby Warshaw, and he joins us now, not on the King's Hammer Hotline, but he joins us here live on camera as well. Bobby, thanks for joining us here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. How are you?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. I never know how I feel about the P word, but it's good to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. Let's talk a little bit about last week and the expansion draft. We heard you on Extra Time Radio talking about how you thought what FC Cincinnati was trying to accomplish, at least starting from the back. You could see what they were trying to do. Why don't you fill us in a little bit on what you meant by that?
Yeah, I think that there's a ton of elements that go into building a team. And all of those elements matter, but really you need to break down your roster and your personnel into some key variables. And I would dissect those key variables into someone that can score. There's a lot of teams out there who play decent soccer and can't score. And if you saw the thing that U.S. Soccer did when they asked everyone to come in and use data to kind of break down Major League Soccer, one of their findings was that if you're going to spend money, one of the best places to spend money is on a center striker. You guys did that. You have Adi, and there's different questions about that, what kind of player he's going to be, what kind of person that's going to show up and play for you guys in MLS. And second variable is number 10. You guys are working on that. You talk about it ad nauseum. It's a big conversation point around you right now. But I think the third one is, can you defend? Because if you think the LA Galaxy, you look at a lot of these teams around MLS, and they do a lot of things well, but they just can't play any stinking defense. And you guys nailed one. Hopefully Adi shows up to be that player. And you potentially nailed the second, right? Kendall Waston and Garza are two really good defensive pieces. You still got to figure out the other parts and then maybe a goalkeeper. We'll see how that guy turns out to be. But dang, man, if you got 2 solid defenders in MLS, you have 1 solid center back, you're ahead of most of the teams.
Let's talk a little bit about expansion draft day as a whole. And I know that we don't want to give. I mean, grades is kind of cliche. I guess that's kind of the other sports how they do it in the U.S. when they do draft grades. But I mean, you have to think that they did well last week, at least from an expansion draft standpoint.
Before I go into whether they did well or not, because I want to break that down with you guys, it was clear what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, they talked about athletic, they talked about dynamic, they talked about league veterans and a chip on their shoulder. And they did that to a T, except maybe Nadam, who doesn't have a ton of league experience and may or may not have a chip on his shoulder. But Darren Maddox and Eric Alexander and Roland Lamar, these guys are definitely out with something to prove. And at least Maddox and Lamar are extremely athletic and are fit the dynamic billing. The question is, it was also clear that they wanted to get players that can play a certain style.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to get players with a high ceiling, I think is the more interesting part. Because if you guys aren't going to go out and spend a ton of money, you also have to find high-level talent within the league. You have to find these inefficiencies. And one of the things about both Roland Lamar and Darren Maddox is they can score 15 goals. And if they do score 15 goals, you're getting those players at a lower price point. So you have to evaluate Cincinnati within the restrictions that they are, within the resources, within what they're building. And I'm not going to say they had a home run, but it was clear what they're trying to do. And I think that's always better than when you're swinging at nothing.
Bobby, you had an interesting piece last week that you liked the essential traits of how they're building the club. Can you give us your thoughts and how you like the FCC way of doing things?
Well, the biggest thing, when you think about FCC, you think about the crowd. I mean, it starts with you guys. And what you have is incredible. I mean, to get the numbers that you had, I went to a lot of those USL stadiums my last year playing, and you guys had something that was just phenomenal. So the base of any club is the fan support and the general feeling within the city. In terms of what they're building with the roster, that's still, TBD. But I would say if you're talking about the FCC way, I think that starts with what you guys have in the city. And again, you guys should feel pretty good about where you're at.
I think a key part of how this club is the first 3 to 6 months of this club, getting to that first transfer window where we might be able to get another quality player, maybe that second DP, because Alan Koch has said they're not going in with they're going into the season, with just one designated player. So where do you think, we've talked about some of the players we've added. Where do you think we might have some hiccups in that first couple of years, and how might some of these experienced players help us get through those tough times?
Well, one of the big questions right now is, can you win in this league without a chance creator, without Diego Valeri, without Miguel Marone, without Kaku, without Maxi Morales? And you go through a lot of those teams. Like I said, I think there's a few variables you can isolate: defenders, striker, and chance creator. But here's the question I asked, and I meant to bring this up off the top when talking about your roster. I have a general question I would ask about any roster. If Bob Bradley coached this team, if Peter Vermees coached this team, if Jesse March coached this team, if Greg Berhalter coached this team, would it make the playoffs? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to give your roster a decent enough chance. If you're not Atlanta, if you're not LAFC, if you're not these teams that spend big, you want to build a solid enough roster that says, could good coaching get us into the playoffs? And you've done that. I meant to bring that point up off the top. That felt like a good point to lead with. I'll be a little later in that. The second point, going to what you said about getting to the summer transfer window, is one of the things Minnesota United did. I know you guys really don't want to be compared to Minnesota United.
Yeah, we're tired of hearing about that.
I'll tell you one part of their game plan that was, in my opinion, a solid concept that might not have gone that well. Is they said, we don't want to spend big on a player that we might not need. Meaning, we want to give all of these other players a chance. We want to give all these players a chance to thrive and then fill in the gap with the DP. So instead of saying, let's bring in a number 10, let's bring in a number 9, let's see who can swim at the MLS level and then fill in the gap from there. So I'm perfectly okay with them going these first 6 months and seeing, can Corbin Bone, remember, he was once a top 5 draft pick. He was once a starter for the under-20 national team. When we talk about all these guys coming through with all this pedigree, that was once Corbin Bone. Emmanuel Ledesma was really good in USL and NASL. Does he have the chops at the MLS level? So that's how I'd answer that. I'm fine with them waiting. And if you want a direct answer, yeah, you still need to figure out that guy, but first you need to figure out if you have him.
A big question mark has been the number of USL level talent we've brought up or we brought 11 players up with us to Major League Soccer. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts in here because a lot of people think that this is an Achilles heel for us, but you've been in this league. You've played in Major League Soccer with Dallas, and I think that we saw this year how tough it was the beginning of the year to bring in such a large number of guys, a lot of different pieces. Every was kind of unsettled. This year, we're at least bringing a little continuity into the league. Do you think that might play into some of the success? It might be an undervalued asset that some of the pundits out there might be missing with FC Cincinnati.
Yeah, one of the biggest undervalued things in this league is the idea of a domestic core, and this isn't just true to MLS. I went to Europe. And it was true in Sweden. It was true in Norway. It's true from the friends I talked to and all the other leagues is that you need a domestic core wherever you are. Because those are the guys that, A, care more. And that's not to say international players don't care. But I cared more about an MLS Cup than I did about a Norwegian trophy or Swedish trophy. You just happen to care more about that trophy that you were raised watching and looking for every single day. So you need that domestic core that just really wants to be there, really values being in that city, really values winning an MLS Cup. And that's what you guys have. You have these players who have been around MLS, who have been around American soccer, who have been in a locker room together. I mean, when we had Alan Koch into the MLS studio, that's one thing he talked about. He said, we really like the culture we had built over the last 2 years, and we want to maintain that. So I'm perfectly fine with you guys bringing all these USL players. It's not solid, but I mean, heck, you look at most MLS teams, 10 to 15 of those guys end up in USL anyway. The only difference is that you have more veteran ones who have experienced these things and actually have something to offer, opposed to the other 10 people who just don't know that they have mostly USL players to begin with.
Bobby, one of those USL players that we're talking about is Jimmy McLaughlin. And it's an extra time episode. You mentioned you spent some time in the past training with him. I was just wondering what your impressions were of him during that training, and what was your reaction when FCC announced him to an MLS deal? Were you surprised at that at all?
I wasn't surprised, largely just because I may or may not talk to Jimmy every now and then. Story, and I said this on the expansion draft, but I just come back from Norway, and I was sitting with Antoine Hopino and Jimmy McLaughlin on Antoine's couch in Philly, and we're just talking about what we're going to do the next year in our contract situations. And they both had gotten an email from their agents about going to Cincinnati. And we were all just like, Cincinnati has a soccer team? Like, why would you go to this expansion USL team? I know that Jimmy and Antoine was like, they're definitely going to MLS, man. They made us a promise. I was like, you know how many teams have promised that to their players? Anyway, it's funny to look back on that moment, seeing where Cincinnati is now and how it worked out. But Jimmy, I'm a huge Jimmy fan, and I think that Jimmy has all the tools. He has the ability on the ball. He's got the acceleration. He's got the center of gravity. My thing with Jimmy, and I've been telling him this for the last 6 years, whenever he signed with Philadelphia originally, is, dude, just pass and move. He has this temptation, I'm sure you guys see it every single week, where he gets on it, and it feels 20% of the time too often, he tries to beat someone. He tries to do something himself. If he got on the ball and someone could just teach him pass, move, with his ability to get off a certain spot and his center of gravity to wiggle by people, he would be untouchable, right? He would have this ability, but he's not quite good enough at dribbling to do it. But if he could release and go get the ball back, he would be great. So I'm a huge Jimmy McLaughlin fan. I think he has all the tools to be an MLS player, but he just has to get that pass move, a little higher of a percentage. And then once he gets to the final third, he can do his Jimmy things.
What other USL players do you think that we're bringing with us that you might have an impact this first season in Major League Soccer?
I'm still a Corbin Bone fan, man. I still got Corbin Bone since when we were 17 or 18. And you're like, that dude's good. He's going to make it. That was Corbin. And again, he went to Chicago at first. It wasn't the right place. They were playing like a 4-4-2 when he was there, and he's not quite a winger. He's not quite a center striker. Again, I'm not sure he's someone that's a full chance creating number 10 as much as he is a Darlington Nagbe retention, ball possession guy. Or if you just say, Corbin, just get on the ball and don't worry about creating chances, but help us build possession and allow those chances to come to you. I think Corbin Bone could be great. He has to find – I'm not sure Alan Koch is the right coach for that, but if they do find the right spot for him, I'm a huge Corbin Bone fan. And I know Blake Smith now is Garza ahead of him, but I really liked what I saw from Blake Smith when he was in Montreal, and then in the games I saw you guys play this year.
We're hanging out with Bobby Warshaw from MLSsoccer.com and Extra Time Radio. Does a great job covering the sport over there. You should go check it out. Extra Time Radio, great podcast. If you're new to Major League Soccer, which many of you are, but let's talk a little bit about your experience in Cincinnati. You've mentioned it, that the fans are the biggest thing that really stood out to you. From it's a very short time frame. I mean, it's only been 3 years, but in those 3 years, I mean, FC Cincinnati has packed in a lot of firsts. They had all these records with the crowds. They've got the Bailey. Last year they the unbeaten run to end the year. Unfortunately, it didn't end in a cup. But I mean, from, as you mentioned, sitting there with Jimmy and Antoine, hearing that this is the first time that this is happening, and now here we are. We're just weeks away from MLS preseason camp starting. I mean, what's going through your head? I mean, are you surprised? Are you excited? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I'm undoubtedly that these homegrown movements, building clubs, building the energy through what you guys do, right? It's a little bit like with the Sons of Ben's in Philadelphia, who just got the supporters group, who through that group of 100 people kept the momentum going and eventually got the MLS team. That's what you guys did. There wasn't a grand stadium. There actually, there weren't high paid players. It was you guys showing up in mass. And I'm a big fan that the growth of soccer depends on us hitting tipping points. That the gateway drug to MLS, because we're not going to sell you on watching Harry Kane every week. We're not going to sell you on watching Marcus Rashford every week. We can sell you on is the experience, and namely through stadiums. And the gateway drug to being addicted to MLS is through the stadium experience. And stadium experience comes from tipping points. That if you put 20,000 cheering fans anywhere doing anything with a common purpose, it's going to be pretty dope. And that's what you guys accomplished. And if I think even if Atlanta had shown up with 10,000 people, even with Miguel Marone and Joseph Martinez, it wouldn't have gotten the ball rolling. So you need that tipping point. From a soccer perspective, I just still like, and this might not be what you guys want to hear, but I still like teams with limited resources. Because I think we are so quick to say Atlanta is the model and LAFC is the model and Toronto is the model. But I think there's actually beauty, and somebody used the word, with inefficiencies and finding ways to get a competitive advantage, even if you don't spend money. Because I think this is largely just true through society, that we tend to favor the money spenders, but there's actually more joy if you can accomplish things from not spending that money. So anyway, from my own soccer's perspective, I want to see how a team like Cincinnati, who's only going to have one DP and only going to spend a certain amount of money, how can you find those little inefficiencies? Because they're there to be had. The Red Bull show that they're to be had. Portland to a certain extent. So I'm excited to see what Cincinnati can pull out.
And we got a lot of our listeners live on Facebook here that have been chiming in and trying to ask some questions. And there's a good one here from Chris Marshall. He kind of wants to know, what is your confidence in Koch as a MLS coach, and maybe what are some challenges he has ahead of him this year?
Oh, the confidence, I don't have a great answer to that yet. I'm trying to stay neutral, because if you have that much, I mean, they had the 15 best players in USL last year. So it's hard to judge the style he built, the style he played. I probably would have played a different style than him. I can acknowledge that. So I'm trying to stay neutral before I watch him play. What was the second question?
What kind of challenges? What kind of challenges do you think face him this year?
Staying positive. They are going to hit a rough patch. I mean, they really haven't hit a rough patch in the last 2 years, have they? Have they had have they had a 2-game losing streak in the last 2 years?
The first season, USL, we had that USL Open Cup run really overshadowed the tough season. But you could think about that. He took John Harkes' team, and then he had to add 6-7 pieces, and integrate all those players through the whole season. So, he's had 2 completely different seasons so far as head coach. And now a third season now he's in charge of Major League Soccer team.
So I would say the 2 biggest challenges are, one, they brought up those 10 or 11 guys, and they are there to provide the core of players, that heart of that team. But that sometimes means you don't play regularly. And Corbin Bone played 30 games the last 3 years, and Forrest Lasso played every single game last year, if I saw that correctly. And
pretty close.
Emery Welshman played most of it. So how can you turn these guys who basically went to USL to get minutes? Maybe Corbin Bone could have found an MLS team, but he went to Cincinnati to play 30 games a year. And these guys were starters and thought of themselves as stars. So, how do you manage them to get their full buy-in? Because their buy-in is going to be critical to success. but they're not going to be playing and their morale is going to be down. And the second part is, how can you manage the adversity? Because they are going to hit a losing streak. Every team in MLS hits a losing streak. If you go back through, there's some point in the season when you don't win for 3 straight weeks or you don't win for 4 straight weeks. And there's a great Jurgen Klopp line to say is the best thing you can do is show up every day with a positive attitude. So how can they turn that losing streak that they really haven't hit? I mean, as you said, even when they hit the little bit of a downturn in USL, they had the Open Cup run, which always keeps your morale high. So when things do take a downturn, how can Alan Koch keep everyone optimistic? How can he keep everyone upbeat, saying this is a dang long season. 7 teams make the playoffs. And if we get it back on track, we always have a shot.
Bobby, you mentioned on ETR this week or maybe last week about FCC's allocation money.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people might be worried that FCC might have spent too much on some of the players, but it's kind of hard to tell exactly where they stand with all that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they have enough left to go around?
So I have 2 thoughts. One, yeah, I do assume they have enough to go around. I mean, I think these teams get a lot of allocation money. I haven't been told how. I tried to ask some of our people in the office, and they're like, it's actually better for everyone involved if you don't know. When it comes to negotiating with teams and players, I was like, all right, I guess so. So I think you have enough. And the second part I would put on this is you want to be smart with your allocation money, but you don't want to be stingy. There's only so many players out there that you know can do the job. And you take Garza and Wasson, for example. I mean, how many left backs are there in the league that you can actually trust to put in a certain performance every week? And Wasson's not a great example because he has the 2 best 11s, but he also had a couple poor seasons in there too when things weren't great in Vancouver. But there's only so many players over a certain level in MLS. And at some point, you just have to go get them. And if I were a decision maker, and granted I'm risk averse, I would spend more money on the certainties, or at least the things I believe have a high degree and a high probability of certainty, than doing more rolls of the dice hoping it works out. So I understand why they're doing that. And to give you a little more clear of an example, take the Tim Parker contract, right? Just got offered is getting paid $800,000 per year from the Red Bulls. And a lot of people say, man, that's high. Is Tim Parker worth that? Well, hell yeah, Tim Parker is worth it, because there's like 7 center backs in this league. They're anywhere close to his level. Mm-hmm. As an individual within your roster, you might say that a domestic center back like that is overpaid. But when you think about what it would take to get a player of his level, it would take more than that allocation money. It would certainly take more than that to bring in a player from overseas. So sometimes you just overpay to give yourself a higher degree of certainty on these risks and investments.
I want to transition a little bit because obviously we got some news today from the league regarding the playoff structure going forward. A lot of fans, myself included, I'm a fan of the home and away legs. I like that. I was not a fan of the single elimination in USL the past couple of years, mainly because, FC Cincinnati got burned by it, Yeah. But so let's talk about the new playoff format and what are your thoughts? Are you on board with it?
So this is an unpopular thing to say in my profession, but I actually don't have strong opinions on it. Largely just because anything they do, fans are going to complain, right? Sure. One of the reasons they went to the 2 legs is because we said it would be better to give these teams a home game. I mean, imagine the playoffs when Portland doesn't have a home game, right? That's a little bit of a bummer. And 2, it just eliminates some of the randomness that you work so hard all season. And yes, I know that we want to reward the higher seeded teams. We want to reward the home teams. And it's something like home teams win 67 or 70% of their playoff games compared to 53% or 55% when there's 2 legs. But there's just always, I can guarantee you that in 8 months or in 12 or 16 months, people are going to find something wrong with this one. I will say that I think anything that raises the stakes in the regular season is good. I think anything that makes a game in April or May matter more and create more drama, which will then create higher TV ratings, is good. I'm not sure this is it. I still think a lot of teams will have the mentality that making it into the playoffs is more important than getting a higher seed. So I do think there will be some coasting and saying, whatever, we'll be fine, the 5th, 6th, or 7th seed. One thing I will point out, too, is that there's concern about the long offseason and the fact that there could now be a 5-month offseason. But what I would point out is that most of the teams had that long of an offseason in between significant games anyway. That most teams were done at the end of October. And maybe, there were 8 teams, 8 of 23 that played longer than they're going to now. So I don't think that there's a huge change on that. Although I do suspect it's something they'll fix. And as Miami and Nashville and these warmer climate teams come in, they will move the start of the season up and load up on home games for the warm cities in February.
That's good with us, man. We can just take our vacation time then. It just fits
Totally.
in perfectly, right?
Yeah, right. Go hang out with Beckham for a nice Miami game.
Yeah, we're brothers, man. We can just tweet up, hang out, so it's great. But I've asked Sam Stachel and Jeff Reuter this question, and a lot of FCC fans, we're used to being the top dog. We're used to progressing from the Open Cup, having a lot of success in the league the last 3 seasons. But this is a new challenge. We've talked about building the roster, all the new additions. So what does success look like for FC Cincinnati in this first year in MLS?
Oh, this is my favorite question, guys. And I think it's so important for you to ask this because one of the things within American sports is this idea of parity and the idea that everyone should have a chance to win a trophy. And I personally don't think that is fun. I like the idea that there are different tiers and that some teams celebrate just as much for getting 5th place or 4th place or beating Atlanta as another team does for winning the trophy. I think that's cool. I think that's better to have different tiers and levels of success. I do think for you guys, it is on a definitive level, it's making the playoffs. I think if you guys make the playoffs, and for what it's worth, I think that's true about 18 or 20 of the teams. That if you make the playoffs, it's a good season. There's probably 5 teams that have higher expectations than that. But I do think, just to go on a tangent for a second, because we talked about Lucci Gonzalez today, I do think that there are other teams that should change that focus. Like for FC Dallas, with Lucci taking over, I think his measure of success is not winning MLS Cup. I think his measure of success is how many of those young players does he turn into sellable assets or national team players? How many does Chris Armas, how many more Tyler Adams does Chris Armas get? So those are the 2 examples, but I really appreciate you guys asking that question. I do think that's going to be a key question for all clubs to ask in the next few years.
I think Brad's very excited about that one. I'll tell you what, he's been saying this for years, Bobby. We got to get you on the show. We got to get you on the show. And finally, now that we're in Major League Soccer, I was like, let's make this happen. So obviously, I don't know how often you get a chance to come to Cincinnati. I'd imagine you're going to be there maybe a couple times this year to catch a game at Nippert Stadium now that they're in the big league. But what are your thoughts on Skyline Chili? Have you heard of it? Have you tried it?
You guys, I have not tried it, but only because I'm not a meat guy. So, is there a no meat option?
Oh, absolutely.
They got Greek salads.
Okay, then I'll be there. I heard they're your new team sponsor.
One of them, yeah.
They're one of them.
Yeah, poor Forrest Lasso there with that GIF that's never going to go away.
Oh no, but yeah, I'm definitely down from Skyline Chili sometime, and I'm really hoping to get out there. And like I said, not just for the game, but just for the fact that you guys embrace everything about the club. You go anywhere in the city, you go to any little cafe, it's an FCC place. So that's what I'm excited for.
Well, we appreciate you being with us, Bob. Brad, Rob, you got any other questions you want to ask?
Real quick, Bobby, I've been listening since, you and George were on Haller Radio together, and huge, big fan of your book, When the Dream Became Reality. How can our subscribers go out there and get that book? Because I think it's just such a great insight to what a lot of players in this country and around the world go into, how to struggle to earn their living. So how can we go out there and get that book and share your experience?
Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate you bringing it up. You can go to Amazon, if you're boycotting Amazon, as many people in New York are these days. At Barnes & Noble, it's on iTunes, it's on pretty much anywhere you can buy books, paperback, hardcover. And like you said, it is just I would like it to be a little bit more insight into what it's like to be an MLS player, an American soccer player, professional athlete. Because I just read a lot. I read almost every professional soccer player's book I could while I was playing. I was like, I don't think this is actually what this life is like. Maybe that's what the life is like for Steven Gerrard and David Beckham and Wayne Rooney, but for the rest of us, that this ain't it. So that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to convey a little bit more of an accurate, honest portrayal of what that lifestyle is.
And we'll make sure to include a link to that in our show notes over at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Go give Bobby a follow on Twitter at bwarshaw14. He's entertaining. He does all kinds of stuff over at MLS headquarters. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
That's Bobby Warshaw joining us here on the King's Hammer Hotline. We appreciate him being with us this week here on the show. It is that time of the show where we give a big shout out and thanks to our tremendous supporters, to King's Hammer and Tim Bronsel, Matt Adamchick, Mama Subes, Brian Malone, Jamie Smed, Mike Hudson, Jonas Tom, Jack Emery, Mike Bowman, Kathleen Francis, Jesse King, Teresa Everidge, Matt Imholt. Yes, Liverpool is superior to Man U in every single way. Sagan Sagai and Matthew Long. We thank them for their support, and we thank each and every one of our supporters for supporting us here at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. To learn more on how to support the show, head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. All right, Brad, you all right? You good? You good?
Yeah, I just love it. First of all, I'm a big Bobby Warshaw fan. Go out and get that book. It's an easy read, great read. Supports him. It's just wonderful. But I love how he gives such honest answers, but there's a lot of thought that goes behind him, because he's coming from a different perspective than a lot of the guys we see out there who've just been reporters and, kind of like us, which is not a bad thing, but he gives a great perspective that there's not many guys out there in the soccer universe. You've got Stu Holden, Taylor Twellman, Alexi, and you got Bobby, the past players. So it's cool to see, especially him. He played on a little bit different level than those guys. So I'm excited to see what his future holds, because I know he's got a lot of success on MLSsoccer.com and all that, but I know he's getting his coaching badges as well. So I don't think he's quite done yet.
When I say this, I really do think if he doesn't decide to coach, or if that isn't the path that he takes, I really do think he has the potential to be, one of those color analysts on a national broadcast. I mean, he's really good. He's well-spoken, knows the game clearly. And of course, he does a fantastic job. So really, really glad that Bobby was the last live guest that we have for 2018. And couldn't have thought of a better guest to round out the year for our live shows. So again, go follow him at bwarshaw14 on Twitter. And of course, as I mentioned, we'll have the link to his book over on our website, CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. All right, it is Christmas time. It's the holiday season, and it wouldn't be the holiday season without a little wish list, right? The things that we want, that we ask Santa for each and every year, that we're just hoping show up underneath the Christmas tree. So, Rob Pierce, I'm going to start with you. If you had a wish list for Santa, or whatever you celebrate there over at the Pierce household, what's on your wish list for 2019 for the orange and blue?
We celebrate Christmas, but we also do a little bit of Festivus.
Oh, Festivus is great.
But we kind of talked about it in the interview with Bobby, and that would be at least competing for that last MLS playoff spot. Even if they don't get it, as long as they're fighting for that, I think that would be a successful season for me. And because I was a good boy this year, and I know I'm not going to take Brad's, I have a second one.
Okay.
And that is to start the season with a Hell is Real derby.
Oh, that is a good one, Rob.
Be a little cool.
That would be awesome to have a Hell is Real derby to start the year. Do you want it to be in Columbus, or do you want it to be in Cincinnati, or do you not care?
Good question. I'm not sure it matters. I'd love for it to be here, but if it were up in Mapfre, that'd be fine too.
How about you, Brad? You want to see that to start the year?
I want to see $15 million extra in Carl Linder's pocket so he can go out and get us a couple of DPs before the season starts. But it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. So I want FC Cincinnati to develop a style of play that we can clearly see and that Alan Koch can learn to build this club around. Because so much of this year is going to be a proving out process, finding the pieces that work, finding the pieces that we can use to set us up long term. And why that's key is that just look at Orlando right now. They're heading into their 5th season, and they are a cluster. Minnesota's heading that way. And so, I think that is such an undervalued process about us finding out the players we want to keep. So maybe that second season we can go out and have some success. Because if you think about it, in NYCFC, they missed out the playoffs the first year, if I'm correct, Nick. And they found out which DPs worked, which signings worked, which they kept. They were able to build upon and improve upon, make some trades in the offseason. I think that's what success looks like in 2018. I would love for us to fight for that last playoff spot, which I think is a realistic chance because we've got a lot of fresh pieces. There are some rebuilding squads in the conference. So if we can find that style of play, something that gives us hope and sets us up for long-term success and that we can actually look at, grade, and then set goals for the future, that's a huge, huge plus.
As far as my Christmas wish list goes, I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier on in the show about needing that playmaking number 10. I would love for FC Cincinnati, and Brad kind of touched on it a second ago, investing in the club and going out and getting that high-priced designated player that's not that's younger than 30, somebody who's 24, 25, has speed to burn, and just is just anytime they get on the ball, you get off your butt at Nippert Stadium and are excited because something special is going to happen. That's what I want for that number 10 spot behind Fernando Adi. I don't know where they're going to get it. I don't know if they have the funds to get it because we don't know how much GAM and TAM and whatnot they've got. We keep hearing rumors that Fabian Johnson might be coming, that they're still interested. He would obviously be a potential designated player. I don't know. But that's kind of where these past 3 years we've really been missing that spot, that attacking 10, and I feel like it was done by committee this past season. Ledesma played it a little bit, Corbin Bone played it a little bit, Nazmi played it a little bit, and they all had success there, right? I mean, they each scored 10 goals last year for FC Cincinnati. The question is, can they do that in Major League Soccer next year? I'm not so sure of that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Bobby said it, in his 3 check marks: goal scorer, defense, and a number 10. And USL level, it's tough to find that quality. But I think a great asset to being an expansion franchise is that we have a little bit extra cash to go out there. We have a little more roster flexibility. So I don't know if it's Matty Fernandez, if it's somebody we're targeting in the summer transfer window, but I do think the way scouting's going, I think I said it before, Allen, I'm sold on as a talent evaluator, and like Bobby said, we'll see with the game management and the coaching staff. I think it's confident we can go out there. I think we have a little bit of advantage compared to some other teams about getting maybe a young number 10 this offseason, or this summer, excuse me.
You mentioned Alan Koch going scouting. I just had to play this because it's been a few weeks.
Coach Alan Koch.
Oh, I'm glad you played the right one.
Yeah, I clearly got beat in that vote. That wasn't even close. But no, we heard last week, after the expansion draft, he hopped on a jet and went across the pond. I can't remember which European country he was in, but he was out looking for potential new players. So, look, that's possible that we're not done hearing new additions for FC Cincinnati, at least from an international standpoint. Although the international roster spots are filling up quickly. I feel like there's more international spots than domestic players at the moment, but that remains to be seen. Is there anything else on your wish list for 2019, gentlemen? Anything that you really want to see the orange and blue do next year? I'll start with you, Rob.
Aside from the 2 I already had,
yeah. I love putting you on the spot.
Yeah, this is. I would say see how they start the season and perhaps get that second DP, kind of base it on the needs of the club at the time. But that would be mine.
All right, Brad, anything else?
Yeah, we saw they signed the Skyline as official chili sponsor, and now I'm looking for the official bourbon sponsor of FC Cincinnati. Buffalo Trace has got my pick, first of all.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Skyline so many times on this podcast. Maybe that's my wish list, that Skyline becomes the official sponsor of the CST podcast, of the Coney phone here in 2019. That'd be cool. That's my wish list. Let's talk. We got some news today. We dabbed a little bit with Bobby about this, dabbled, I guess I should say, about the playoff format. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a fan of 7 teams getting into the postseason in each conference. There's 12 teams on each side of the bracket right now in the East and the West. 7 out of 12 teams make the postseason. I don't know. To me, that doesn't seem right. That seems like you can get by and, again, get hot at the end of the season. Kind of like what Portland did. And obviously, they didn't win the Cup this year, but they got hot at the right time, and it got them the MLS Cup. Rob, do you have any feelings? Is there anything that you think about as far as the new postseason format that either you like or you dislike?
I get the reasoning behind it. You're trying to time it with the international windows, international weekend, I guess is what I mean to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of like a lot of people. I think that single elimination, it just makes it seem too much like the USL. I mean, all you need now is to have one more team, make it 8 teams in each conference that make the tournament, and you have the USL playoffs, basically.
I feel like it's just like almost another U.S. Open Cup because everybody's in the playoffs. Brad, you got any thoughts?
I just said it on Twitter, MLS is set up for parity or mediocrity. If you're going to be a salary cap league and not be the best in the world like the NBA, or really the NFL's better comparison, you do need a large playoff system, I think, to keep interest, because you don't, at the end of the season, unlike other soccer leagues in the world, you don't have promotion relegation. If you want to get the eyeballs on the TV, which is going to give you money, which is then going to improve the league and the talent level, you need to have a larger playoff system. So I know it's a little bit more than 50%. You bring a couple new teams next year, it'll be about 50%. I'm all right with it. I like seeing my teams in playoffs. I wish Cincinnati teams would win in the playoffs, but at least gives us the chance. And I think it's going to keep more games interesting in Major League Soccer, especially if you're not going to have some sort of promotion relegation. Because what's worse than going to see in the Reds in September and August and September? I mean, season's over.
Oh, you get to see all the good prospects that are going to have a bright, shining future for the Reds.
Yeah. That's why there's only about 5,000 people at those games.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Mike Hudson.
I mean, it's kind of like
go ahead.
going to see a Manchester United game right now. I mean, there's no point. They're not going to qualify for Champions League spot. They're not going to quite get relegated. It's kind of pointless. They should just fold up the rest of the year.
But we did get this comment on YouTube from Mike Hudson. He says the reason why they moved to 7 is in preparation for adding additional teams to the league. So they did this back in a couple years ago when they went to 22 teams. They made it 6 teams per conference. I get why they did it. We did get this wish list item from Jeff Tebbets. He says he wants a season where all the all-stars from other teams don't sit out the game because of the turf at Nippert. So he wants to be able to see guys like Zlatan next season, guys like Bastian Schweinsteiger, although he did play on that turf in the Open Cup a couple years ago. But it looks like it's going to be new turf down at Nippert. So I hope that for our sake, for fans' sake, we do get to see MLS All-Stars. So good stuff from you. I appreciate the wish list there, Jeff. Coming up here in just a few moments, we're going to debut a new segment after the show called CST Extra Time. And if this goes well, we may incorporate it into 2019. So make sure you stay tuned after the show for that. Before we get out of here, I just want to say, again, if you want to support the show, head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. Anything you can do to help us out, it really does go a long way. We really do appreciate all the generosity. If you can't help us out financially, there are other ways to support the show. Head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/iTunes or /Google to get subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode of CST. All right, final thoughts. I'll start with you, Rob. Appreciate all that you do for the show and everything, and hope you and your family have a wonderful holiday. Your final thoughts?
Thank you, Subes, and also to all our listeners and watchers out there. So for my final thought, we've had 2 extra time radio guests on recently, Bobby Warshaw tonight and Sam Stachel a few weeks ago. If we can get Andrew Wiebe and Matt Doyle on in January, that would be the superfecta. But there's a reason why that we've been after these guys as FCC transitions to MLS. What we do with FCC Extra Time Radio does with the entire league. They're a treasure trove of MLS knowledge. So if you like listening to podcasts, you should definitely check them out. I have the ability to listen to several podcasts at work. I could pop on my headphones and just hit play.
Must be nice.
Yeah. Like I said, there are several I listen to, but if I could only listen to one, it would be Extra Time Radio. So I'm glad we had Bobby on tonight, and that's my final thought.
Good stuff, Rob. As always, appreciate all that you do. And again, Merry Christmas, buddy.
You too.
All right. Final thoughts from Brad Weigel. Brad?
Rob, you got to keep in mind, David Goss was our actual first Extra Time Radio guest. He came on, I want to say last summer during the Open Cup run, and I think also helped us out with some March to Match Day stuff for the New York Red Bulls too. So a great group of guys, and we didn't even have to ask them twice to come on. They've been so willing, helpful. So it's just great to have these guys in the league we're coming into. I said it before. I really mean it. Go out and get Bobby's book. When the Dream Becomes Reality. It's like $10 on Amazon. You can download it for Kindle. You get the paperback book. It's awesome. One of my 3 favorite soccer books out there. So go out and get it. Support him. And just looking forward to 2019. There's so many big things ahead. We're going to have 2 weeks off here live, but we'll still have some stuff coming out on the website. And then coming in January 1st, we're going to start previewing the Super Draft. A lot of great stuff coming ahead. And really before you know it, we're a month away from players reporting to training camp. It's hard to believe we're already at that point in time. So it's exciting. It's going to keep coming in fast. And I'm excited to be here with you all for the ride.
Good stuff, Brad. As always, Merry Christmas to you and your family. And I don't know when you'll be on again. You've been on quite a bit lately, and I know you're getting ready for a big trip as well. But I just want to say thank you for all your efforts the last few months. It's very much appreciated.
Dude, man, thanks, and I love it, and excited to be here with y'all.
My final thought as we get out of here, Brad kind of mentioned it. It is our live show, our last live show of 2018. It doesn't mean that we won't have a podcast the next 2 weeks. We actually have already kind of pre-produced these episodes, and we have we thought tonight was a special guest, folks. We're very excited for a special surprise guest on next week's episode of the podcast. So this is even more of a reason for you to go out and get subscribed to the show so that you don't miss an episode of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We're available on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify. I think we're also soon to be in Pandora. We're going to be there as well. Google Podcasts. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Cincinnati Soccer Talk. So get subscribed. Next week, you're going to be excited. I'm just gonna leave it at that. You're going to be very excited, and we hope everybody enjoys the next couple of weeks. Looks like, Brad, you want to say something else.
Nope.
Oh,
I'm
right.
just I'm excited for the special guest we're gonna have. He looks great in a blazer. He's got tremendous hair. He's got 6-pack abs. It's wonderful.
No, I am not the guest.
No.
Oh, you're talking about something else. Anyway, I kid, of course. We hope each and every one of you have a wonderful holiday, Merry Christmas, a happy and safe New Year. We've got extra time coming up next after this. In the meantime, for Brad Weigel and Rob Pierce, I'm Subes, reminding you to watch your tackles. We will see you all next week. And welcome into CST Extra Time. I know if you're watching live, you have no idea what just happened. Hey, we're back. We didn't go anywhere. This is the fun part of the show where we answer questions that you have provided us here on CST Extra Time. So make sure you send us your tweets with the hashtag CST Extra Time. Our first Twitter question this week comes from Mr. Hodenbaugh. I hope I said that right. I think I did a few weeks ago. It says, CST crew, it's time for some English Premier League prognosticating. Who wins the Premier League? Who gets relegated? I really didn't want to have to answer this question because, let's face it, my team has been out of it since August. But, Rob, your team, Liverpool, have yet to lose in the Premier League this year. So, who wins the Premier League and who gets relegated?
Well, before I answer that, I have a question of my own to ask, and
All right.
that is, if we're still tied after extra time, do we go to penalty kicks?
Yeah, that's how it works here. That's exactly how it works here. How did you know?
Sorry, I thought of that this afternoon. I've been waiting all evening to use it.
Oh, that's great.
So, of course, the Premier League champion this year will be Liverpool. Relegations, I will go with Southampton and Burnley and Fulham. As a Kloppite, I'm kind of hoping David Wagner can get Huddersfield out of the drop zone. So I guess there's a little bit of bias there, but they still have some work to do yet to be clear.
Brad, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, right. I would love that to be the case. I'd love for Tottenham to win the title, but I don't see it. Liverpool's on a great run. I still don't buy them. I think Manchester City is by far and away the best team in the league. I know, there was a result a couple weeks ago, but I just think Man City is a complete package. I think they've got a chance to win the double of the Premier League and the Champions League. I think it's going to happen. The only thing that might keep Liverpool in the chase is that they might bow out of the Champions League a little early this year, but you never know. Klopp gets a lot out of these guys, so I think it's not going to be easy for Man City by any means. But I still think that their level of talent I think it's still several notches better than Liverpool.
Yeah, City's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I mean at every spot.
Yeah,
I think it's going to come down to either one of those two teams, though. Which team is going to slip up first? We shall see. Could not be more disappointed as a Manchester United fan. I mean, if it wasn't more clear over the weekend that it's time for Mourinho to go, I don't know what else is. Not only that, they signed Chris Smalling to a 4-year extension. Like Chris Smalling, who I think is one of the worst defenders we have.
Is that on him? Is that on Mourinho?
No. Well, I mean, he's got some input, but I mean, I would hope that Jose Mourinho is smart enough to say, wait a minute, this is not Manchester United level signing. I don't know what's going on there. It's disappointing, but they need to get rid of everybody. Mourinho needs to go. Ed Woodward needs to go. The board needs to go. They just need a reboot. They really do. And
as long as they leave Poch alone.
Yeah, I don't. I don't even know. So that's a great question to start off our first edition of Extra Time. Our next question. This is from Jeff Tebbets. Way too early predictions for the 2019 USL Championship winner. Ooh, that's a good one. Obviously, we were probably slightly rooting for Indy, I would imagine, guys.
They just got a whole lot better, I think.
Yeah.
That would be who my rooting interest would be behind for FCC reasons, obviously.
Yeah.
I've been really bad about paying attention to the West, so I really can't speak for over there.
You're not high on Ronaldo taking over Las Vegas? That just seems like a dream come true.
Yeah, that definitely has potential.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I mean, you're going to have a lot of the same teams. There's still a lot of influx. There's a lot of new teams coming in. There's a lot of new dropping down, a lot of new coming in to the USL Championship. I think Phoenix is going to be another strong case. Can't get past New York Red Bulls again. And Louisville, they got a great coach. And think about this today. We haven't even talked about it yet. Dave Sarakin, U.S. men's national team coach for a little over a year, just got named today to be North Carolina's head coach. I mean, that's mind-blowing that a guy of that caliber drops down. Even though he's with Steve Malik, who's on the U.S. Soccer Board or whatnot, that is a huge signing to enter the league. So you have to think that they're just going to get a lot of players just because his, caliber and history.
I guess as far as I'm concerned, for 2019 in USL, I don't care who it is as long as it's not that team down south. I'm tired of them winning it year in and year out. So I'm going to be rooting for Indy. I'm putting my my backing behind Indy 11 for next year. Hopefully I'll still be able to pay attention to everything going on in the USL. This next question is from Mike Berryman. Based on the current roster, predictions for FC Cincinnati's finishing place in the 2019 MLS East. Brad, 1 through 12, pick a number. Where are they going to finish next year? I'll make it easier. Probably anywhere between 7 and 12.
Yeah. I think it's going to be 9th.
Okay.
I want to see. I feel like I said, my biggest question mark going into the season, I think Allen is a great talent evaluator. But in 2 seasons, we've really yet to see a consistent style of play. It's been way too much of the hope our talent just gets us through. And we are going to be a little bit deficient in that area this year. So it's how can Allen, organize this club in a specific formation to get that win? And, I think there's several things that came to light this week. Birding was saying that he had each member of the technical staff was watching several MLS teams over the course of the entire year. So how much was that detracting away from some of their game planning or technical work? I don't know. But, you see James O'Connor look unbeatable in USL and he wins 2 games in Major League Soccer. Maybe we get a little bit more of, Allen can work better with some of these talented players. So that's our question mark. I think it's honest. But you've got to give him credit. He's won everywhere he's gone. So it's a question mark, but I think for now we're going to be touching distance, I think, still.
I was going to say, I think that's a realistic expectation. Bottom half of the Eastern Conference. And who knows? I mean, they may go sign 2 or 3 more players, and now all of a sudden that might change things, but I'm not counting on that. Rob? Go ahead, Brad.
I was going to say, I'm positive where this club's going.
Sure.
But when you don't have $25 million to drop on players in your first year, the margins are narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people have been on the radio this week have said that they don't necessarily believe that, but it's the truth. When you don't have the Valeries, the Almirones, the Joseph Martinez of the world, it's tougher to win games. And FC Cincinnati, instead of going out and getting a lot of high-quality players and then having league average players everywhere else, they've decided to try to go out and get league average or above league average players in a lot of the positions in the starting 11. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to play out. We haven't seen that within expansion teams in a long time. We've seen, NYCFC went out and got Lampard and Pirlo. We've seen what Atlanta's done. And then we've seen what Minnesota's done. So it's going to be interesting. It's literally the FCC way. You've got Minnesota, Orlando, Atlanta ways. This is the FCC way.
I'll go 1 spot higher and take 8th. I think that there's enough talent right now to push for that last playoff spot. In the end, I'm not quite sure that they get there, but just as long as they make a push for it, I mean that's really all I can ask for them anyway. I mean, you have to keep expectations reasonable. I mean, they're just not going to do what Atlanta United has done. It's just not going to happen.
Yep. All right, last one. This is from Andrew Torres. What is the best place in the Cincinnati area to party at on New Year's Eve?
Wherever the alcohol's free. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point, Brad.
I mean, that's why I like hanging out with Rob's house, because it doesn't cost me anything.
I've never been out on the town on New Year's Eve here in Cincinnati. I've always been, usually it's here. I mean, the last few weeks, the wife and I have done just a game night and, by the fire, have the fire going. But in years past, it's been over at a friend's house or whatever. So I really don't, I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
Yeah, same here, considering I'm not even there.
If you want the best drinks in Cincinnati, I'll tell you where to go. Definitely Wise Guys. Definitely Wise Guys in OTR.
All right. I could not remember. I'm trying. We got this question earlier this evening, and I've been jogging my mind, trying to think the last time I was even in Cincinnati for New Year's Eve. It probably was sometime in college. No, I take that back. I was living in Cincinnati in 05, 06 before I got married. So that would have been.
Mama Subs has to have a huge blowout on New Year's Eve, right? Come on. I mean, we see what she does during FC Cincinnati games. I imagine New Year's Eve has to be like her Super Bowl of the year, right?
Yeah. She'll probably be spending New Year's Eve like, tweeting, Alan Koch and her family, and that's what she loves to do. No, we're excited. She's going to be coming up here in a few weeks for Christmas, and so I'll get a chance to spend a few days with her and with Papa Subs, and it'll be a good time. But yeah, I'm not a big New Year's guy. I just have never. Believe it or not, I mean, as much as it surprises everybody who's watching this, Subs is not the most crazy, wild guy in the world. I just like to sit back and enjoy maybe a race car race, a video game, or that's all I like to do. I keep things simple around here.
Yeah, we stay up and we'll watch the ball drop, and like I said, we'll play some games, and I'll have a few beers. But the reason why I don't go out anywhere is because I love the beer selection that I have in the house. It's always what I want to drink,
and it's free. Well,
yeah,
not really.
Well,
you paid for it. But.
Just when I come over and drink it.
Oh man, that is going to do it for Extra Time. If you're a fan or if you liked Extra Time, make sure you let us know. Feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. That is going to do it. We'll see all of you next time.